Welcome to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein, talking about the evolutionary, the revolutionary, the inspiration and the perspiration, and those aha moments that change everything. And now, here's your host, Rich Goldstein.
Rich Goldstein here, host of the Innovations and Breakthroughs podcast, where I feature top leaders and the path they took to create change. Past guests include James Thompson, Kevin King, and Josh Snow. This episode is brought to you by my company, Goldstein Patent Law, where we help you protect your ideas and products. We've advised and obtained patents for thousands of companies over the past 26 years. So if you're a company that has software, product, or design you want protected, go to goldsteinpatentlaw.com, where there are amazing free resources for learning about the patent process. And you can email my team, welcome@goldsteinpc.com, to explore if it's a match to work together. You could also check out the book I wrote for the American Bar Association that explains in plain English how patents work. It's called the ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent. I have here today my good friend, Zack Leonard. Zack is the president and founder of Gembah. Gembah is an Austin, Texas-based product design and sourcing company that helps bring product concepts to life. Before he founded Gembah, Zack was on the ground floor of Instacart. He helped them go literally from nothing to seven figures in Texas markets, and help them create partnerships with companies such as Whole Foods and Costco. I'm so glad you're here, Zack. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rich. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And so let's see. So let's talk about innovation a bit.
Sure.
So when it comes to innovation and the process that people follow with innovation, I mean, how do you typically go about that?
Yeah, so we have a pretty linear process that we try to help and guide our customers through, starting with research, right? You have to have some sort of validation through either data or through your idea that tells people, hey, what you're doing is innovative and novel. And so there's indicators that you can look at through market research. Specifically if you're, for example, selling on Amazon, you can look at different tools and software out there that can kind of guide you in the right direction. You can look at places like Etsy or Pinterest for inspiration for ideas, but ultimately you need to look for what people are searching for, right? Or you need to solve a problem that people are asking you to solve.
Right.
And so
you got some verification. You headed in the right direction towards something that people care about.
Right. And so that's the first step in innovation is, coming up with the idea and then validating it through some sort of market research, right? After you have that validation, the next step is to get those ideas out onto plain paper. And so you need to hire up the right team depending on what you're actually going to be innovating in, right? So are you trying to make something different in the soft goods space? Are you trying to make something that requires injection molding? Are you making something that requires electronics? Are you doing something in the medical space? All of those different verticals have different people associated with how you're going to assemble the team to create your product or create your innovation. And so from a product standpoint, same thing with software. If you go down the software path, you need a different engineer. Are you going to be coding it in different languages, right? So making sure that you have the right person for the job, if you're the inventor, if you're the creator, and that's not your hard skill, right? You need to make sure that you have the right people to do that. And so part of what we do at Gembah is we have the team that's worked on products specifically in those niches that we assign you with depending on the complexity of the product. And so from there, once you have, like, for example, at soft goods, you're going to want to get matched up with an industrial designer who's done soft goods before. If you have a plastic or metal or glass based product, you're going to want to add a mechanical engineer to that equation, preferably someone who's worked in those spaces before. And then finally, if you're going to make some complex electronics, for example, like a massage gun that has injection molding electronics, you're going to want to also have a electrical engineer involved to help design the PCBs and how everything communicates back and forth throughout the product. And then the mechanical engineer will make sure that once that PCB is made and how the wiring's there, how is it housed within the product, not only from a functional standpoint, but also from a safety and compliance standpoint. So a lot of things you have to do when you're going down the route of innovating in the space. Ultimately, it comes down to the first two steps of validating that idea and then assembling the team to create the product.
Yeah, so it sounds like part of after you validate it, what you need to do is triage what type of technology is involved, and really who are the experts, who are the people that can help you
Right.
according to what's needed to really bring it to life.
Right, right. And then once you do that as well, you gotta think about, everyone has a budget or time or constraints to try and move on this product, right? So what do you want to do from a technology standpoint that you can leverage that's already out there? Are you trying to create something that you can leverage existing technology, or do you actually need to innovate in the space from a technology standpoint? An example for that is, charging, right? If you're charging a phone, if you're charging something, do you want to innovate something that's going to require a much larger battery and that's going to make the charging capacity go up? Or do you want to leverage something that's already out there, like a USB-C or a micro USB port that's going to do the job and it's much more universally used around the world? And so those are the decisions when you go down the route of innovating is, what's the part you're actually innovating in? Is it some sort of functionality of the product? Is it design and look of the product that you're trying to solve, a complex problem that's already been established? Or are you truly creating something that's unique to the world that is going to require much more of an investment? If you think about like in the medical space, right? Like right now they're trying to innovate and come up with a vaccine for COVID, right? Like that's never been done before. So they're investing a ton of time and capital and resources because it's a pandemic and they need to do that. If you're creating a product, on the other hand, you may want to just be the first to market and get something from an MVP perspective out there as fast as you can to start getting feedback and testing, and then come up and then solve all those problems that you're testing for in version 2 of that product. So it just depends on where you are.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that came to mind when you were mentioning the experts is I think part of it is determining the feasibility of it, because
Yeah.
I mean, even with all the experts, not everything's feasible. Like you might say, hey, wouldn't it be great if I had a space heater that I could carry around with me, and that's rechargeable? And I mean, you and I both have enough technical knowledge to know that that a rechargeable space heater just isn't feasible. You can't have a battery that's big enough to be used in a heater. That
Right.
it's just not practical, right?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
yeah, I was thinking that when you mentioned the battery before, and those types of design constraints, like some things just aren't feasible, and you need to figure that out at an early stage too.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, when I think about a company like that that's pioneered in the space, I always, whenever I present, I talk about this company, but it's Yeti, right? Yeti is based in Austin. Um, I like to think of what they do is called incremental innovation, where they're taking existing problems and they're solving it with better class products. So what did Yeti do at the core of their business? They're solving the problem of, how do I keep my beers cold, and how do I keep my wine, or my drinks cold, or my drinks hot, right? And so what they did is they took existing technology like a cooler and made it with much greater insulation capabilities to keep it colder for longer. So from a cost perspective, like when you look at a Yeti bottle, I actually have one right here in front of me. Um, this thermos type of bottle has been around for a long time, but what did they do? They used the technology of insulation as well as the metal in here to keep it colder for longer. I can go to sleep and wake up and there's still ice cubes in my Yeti, right? But that hadn't been done before in mass production or in mass consumerism, right? And so what they did is they said, how do I do this better? And how do I make the customer experience with keeping your drinks cold better? And so they invested in that technology, and now they're almost $1 billion brand, right? So it doesn't have to be something that's truly novel in the sense of, I have to create some world, changing technology. But if you can create something that's innovative, that solves a problem that has never been done before, you're going to have a really big brand, potentially like Yeti.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but I mean, part of it is spotting the need, and
Right.
then, and knowing that something is possible by stretching existing technology a little bit. Like, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking technology. It's just that people need something like this. So what can we do
Right.
to make the most of what's possible? What resources are
Right.
available?
Right. I would have loved to be in the early stages of Yeti or something, where they were talking about, what is the problem that we're solving here? Like, drinks have been kept cold for, years,
Right.
hundreds of years, right? But how do I keep it cold for a day, 2 days, right? Like, what's the stretch of limitation I can do to keep my drinks cold? Like, I don't know. And they're continuously trying to do that at a regular basis. Now they built a massive brand to do that.
Right. And probably part of that conversation was the realization that people are willing to spend a lot to keep
Right.
their drinks cold. And
Right.
they said, we can charge several times what other coolers are
Right.
going for if we just have an incremental increase in efficiency.
Exactly. Exactly right. And then they spent a ton of money on branding. They have stores now. It's a really cool brand, and it's obviously based in Austin. So I like to pump it as much as I can, being that I live here. But yeah, I think what they've done in the space, just the philosophy that they've taken and how to incrementally innovate, is something that is truly, awesome to see, especially in this space, especially in the product space.
Yeah, you got to respect that for sure.
Yep.
And the brand that they built, I guess, which leads towards IP, right? I mean, they've been fairly aggressive in protecting their IP.
Yeah, and something to that effect, there's actually a competitive product, I believe, called Arctic. And from what I understand, they intentionally knocked off and infringed on Yeti's products and made a deal with Yeti to give them, I think, some sort of kickback, because they just got so big so fast that Yeti was like, look, you can take it and run with it. And as long as we get some sort of royalty on the back end of it. So, they took the risk, obviously, and they, now they're paying for it from an IP perspective, like you said, because they didn't come up with something novel, and Yeti has a ton of patents on their products. And so, Arctic, their knockoff brand, has to pay them as a result of that.
Yeah, which isn't so bad. I mean,
Right.
there's
It's a
only so
business
much
decision.
market share you could capture if
Right.
you're able to collect royalties on other parts of the market share that you probably weren't going to get anyway.
Right.
Then it's
Exactly.
just added revenue with no cost.
Right. Right. And I think, going back to the patent side, that is probably the next step in that process of innovating, is figuring out the limitation of what you can and can't do based on the technology that's out there. So once you've done the market research, you have your idea, you've assembled the team, now you need to figure out, okay, what can and can't I do from a design and engineering perspective, because someone else has already done it, right? I think, once you have that flight plan of, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do, I have the team assembled, you can kind of triangulate and make sure that everything can move forward at a reasonable pace. Or you might just say, hey, look, there's too much protection here, I can't even do what I want to do. So then you start and try it with another product. But ultimately, that's kind of the starting point of innovation, is getting that idea, validating it, making sure you can or cannot do what you're actually doing, and then getting the team assembled, ready to go to move on that. And then you go into, obviously, prototyping, manufacturing, testing, all that kind of stuff. But from an innovation standpoint, it starts there.
Right. Absolutely. And so then once you move on to prototyping, I mean, how do you set the benchmarks for how the prototype needs to perform?
Yeah, I think it depends on the type of product and also the type of budget, right? So if you're, unlimited budget, you might want to go into small batch manufacturing and start, actually getting molds and tooling built for your product here or domestically, wherever you're selling the product. So for example, in the US, there's a ton of small batch manufacturers that can do one-off prototyping. I know, for example, if you go to PCB shops here, they can do the PCBs here. And sometimes if you're making just a prototype PCB, it can be thousands of dollars. If you were to do that overseas at mass production, it's significantly cheaper, right? Or if you do,
Right.
you go overseas and prototype overseas with the factory that you want to go into mass production with, it's going to be significantly cheaper. With money aside, you might want to go that route. Another route, if you have an injection molded or plastic based good, you may want to start doing some 3D printing, right? That's a cheap way for you to get some, functional, maybe structural or some look and feel to the product that you won't really get to do with just some sort of CAD or visual representation of it in the computer or digitally. or in 2D drawings or something like that. So those are really from I think the low budget to the high budget, the types of things that you can do. Or you can do like the the Home Depot hero, where you just go buy a bunch of stuff off the shelf and try and construct it yourself, and you're like, yep, here's what I got, and then give it to an engineer and try and make it made for manufacturing.
I mean, for some products that works, just off the shelf components that you put together, and you can get a feel for how it's going to work. Right. And then you refine into something with maybe custom parts, some 3D printed parts, and work your way towards having parts actually molded.
That's absolutely right.
In quantity. Yeah,
that's absolutely right. I mean, there's people that we've worked with that are looking to do something in the camera space, and they're not trying to make a new camera. They're just trying to make a new enclosure around the camera, right? To differentiate from what's out there, maybe use some different technology with the camera software that will do something different, right? Like that's the differentiator. Creating a brand new camera. I mean, think about where the technology for cameras has come in the last 20 years. Yeah. You went from like disposables and Polaroids and Kodaks to the best camera you can find is probably on your phone, right? And so there's no reason to innovate in the camera space when the phone companies are going to continuously every single year come out with a better camera. You got to figure out the way to innovate in the ancillary part of the camera that's going to make you stand out amongst your product competition.
Right, where the innovation can be bringing existing things together in a way that people haven't thought of. And it's like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just like find a new way to use the wheel or a new way to mount the wheel or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Cool. And so, now when it comes to IP again, I mean, I think you had said before the goal is to create defensible products. Mm-hmm. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. So, obviously there's so much competition out there in terms of how you can sell a product. There's Amazon, there's Walmart.com, there's eBay, there's Instagram, there's your own Shopify, your e-commerce site, right? There's so many different ways you can sell a product. And because of that, there's so much consumerism that's going on where you can get new products out there in a much more streamlined way. You can do Facebook ads, Instagrams, etc. There's just so much competition. The Amazon way of white labeling a product and just selling it on Amazon is becoming increasingly more difficult as there's more players in the game. I think there's now around 2 million Amazon FBA sellers out there.
Unbelievable.
A crazy number of them. And if they're all, and I think 40% of them are in China and a good percentage of them are actually factories. So factories are starting to get smart and say, I don't have to use an Amazon seller or a third party to sell my product. I can just go direct. And so with all that coming, all that kind of stacking up against you, you have to think, how do I create a product that actually is defensible to protect my revenue and protect my idea? So the philosophy at Gembah is that, white labeling a product has a shelf life, right? The next person can just go figure out a way to make the product cheaper and then sell it and compete against you because there's no defensibility there. So from a defensibility perspective, what you need to do, or what we try and strive to do at Gembah, is create defensible products, either from a design capacity or from a utility capacity. And then we can engage, someone like you, Rich, you can go and, help with the design and utility patent process and get a patent pending for utilities, a provisional patent for utility patents, or you can get a design patent in a pretty expedited manner, right? But the goal is that you're creating some value to your business by creating a defensible product. At the end of the day, if you're going to have an exit at some point, there's a lot more value to a business if you have something that is defensible, whether it's software or hardware or a product or something that makes it so that no one else can touch you in that space.
Absolutely. So it's a combination of differentiation and something, generally IP protection, that keeps that differentiation exclusive.
Exactly. And then you can talk about licensing agreements. I mean, there's so many other things you can do once you have a defensible product, especially if it's hot, right? People are going to be pounding at your door and trying to get an opportunity for you to do that. Or you can create version 2 of that product and just keep the defense going. Like you create multiple variations of your product or ancillary variations of your product, and that's how you create a brand, right? That's how you create the value of a brand, is defensible, consistent, high value products.
Absolutely. So, so we talked a bit about validating just the overall process in terms of first validating um, the innovation, assembling the team, prototyping, and I guess next is sourcing and manufacturing.
Yeah. Once you've created, the the whole, I mean, if you're at that stage where you've already created the IP, you've gone into prototyping, you have your sample ready to go, either with your factory or some small batch or some rendering of your product. The next step would be to go and start to pick your factory partner. And part of that, again, this is a part that we really hammer home at Gembah is creating a long-standing positive relationship with your manufacturer. Then I think a lot of people overlook that aspect of their business because you don't see them every day. You can't go, like if you're in the US, for example, you can't just go to China on a whim and go talk to your factory, be on production unless you want to be there for an extended amount of time, right? Production usually takes 10 to 45 days depending on the complexity of your product. So unless you want to get on a plane and go over there consistently and be on the floor and watch everything in real time, it's really hard to see everything that's going on. And so having a trusted, vetted partner that can do that and take that worry away from you is of paramount importance. And building the relationship is going to yield you that sort of high value business relationship that you'll have, or partnership that you'll have with your factory. There's some tips and tricks I can give to, high level that can help with that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you need to be able to have a truly vetted and trusted partnership with your factory to make sure that you're going to put a great product in your customers' hands.
Got it. And I think it sounds like what you're saying too is that it's an underestimated part of your company, and it is very much though, like that's your team, that's your manufacturing team, even though it's
Right.
very compartmentalized, even though it's very much like, okay, we're paying you X dollars, this is what you're building, and they're then shipping you products. So it's compartmentalized in a way that maybe your internal team isn't, where it's like people are all coming into the same office and working together. Like they're over there doing their thing, but it's still very much your team and as important as the rest of your team.
Yeah, right. I mean, from what, with the approach that we take is that we're like your VP of supply chain, or we're your VP of operations overseas, right? And so you have someone who understands the culture, the business culture, because they're two different things, who understands manufacturing, who can show up to the factory on your behalf, who can advocate for you, who can be your eyes and ears on the ground to make sure that you have that trusted partnership, as well as to keep them honest. I mean, again, in any building type of relationship you have, whether it's you're building a house, you're building a product, you have to trust the person that's building it. And they're gonna, they hire a team, they contract out work sometimes, and the factories do that too. They might ship some of your product to a different factory to assemble. You just need to know that. You need to know that up front, who you're working with. You need to know what their expertise is. And you need to know if they're going to build the house or the product that you actually want. And so what Gembah does is try to provide that transparency and give you some eyes and ears and confidence back in your supply chain.
Yeah, totally. And but now, like, so you've been working with a lot of clients on these various stages in terms of the validating the design, the prototyping, the sourcing, and then
Mm-hmm.
getting involved, helping them with with the manufacturing, and as you said, kind of making sure that things go the way that they ought to be with that. But I also know that you've been innovating a platform. You've been kind of innovating this whole design and manufacturing process by creating a platform for innovation.
Right.
So tell me about the innovation of the innovation platform.
Yeah. So we're in the process of getting this rolled out here. We're in the final steps of the software build, and basically the idea behind the platform is that anyone, at a high level, will start even further back. Humans are naturally creators. That's what makes us different from all the other species in the world, right? We think, we create. That's what we've pretty much been put on this earth to do, in my opinion. And we're trying to enable that creative spirit and do it in such a streamlined linear process that if someone has an idea for a product, they can come to the Gembah platform. As soon as they put the idea in the funnel, for example, they will have the designer, the engineer, it's needed, the compliance measures, the factory, the team overseas, the logistics, all figured out ahead of time. So you have, go back to the word flight plan, but you have that entire flight plan right in front of your eyes through software. So it says, hey, as soon as I want to create, again, let's go back. If I want to create this pen, for example, I would have a pen designer, the pen compliance, the pen manufacturer, hopefully some degree of understanding from sample and cost, depending on the different types of materials I want to go into it. I'll know what the logistics cost would be, container loads, all at the push of a button. That's the goal. And so what we're trying to do is build technology that's going to incrementally get you to that point. So when we release this software, it's at the front, it's going to be a lot more of, hey, I can give you a pretty good glimpse of that. I can match you up with the right people. Are we going to have all those costs in line and everything at the start? Probably not. But as we build continuously on that, we'll be able to do that.
Right. Exactly. And the only thing missing then is sell me this pen.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the marketing side of it. That's up to the people who come up with the creations.
Right. Exactly.
Right? We can only do so much.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And so, and it sounds like what it's all about is just enabling creativity, right? I mean, it's like tools that help people do what they do naturally, which is be creative. Right.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, I want to see cool things get put out in the world. I'm sure you do too. It's part of, I'm sure, why you went into IP, right? You like being at the forefront of innovation. You like seeing what's out there. You like researching what's out there. I mean, it's a cool space to be in my opinion. And I think when you have the opportunity to put something out there that can continue to push the boundaries of what creativity means, it's something special. And so I think that's something that you and I are both doing right now.
Absolutely. I mean, helping people fulfill on their dreams and visions.
Right.
I mean, I guess for some people, it's more of a dream because they haven't done anything before with a product. And for other people who are in the business of making products, maybe they've been white labeling products. And so it's not as much a dream as it is a vision where they see the possibility of innovating in a field. And so, I mean, we help them fulfill those visions.
Absolutely. That's spot on.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think then that's a perfect note where we can say, how would people get in touch with you, or how would they learn more about you and your company?
Yeah, I mean, people can stop by gembah.com, gembah.com, learn more there. There's a ton of content there that we're putting out on a weekly basis to get caught up to speed on what's going on in the world of innovation and manufacturing and design. You can also email info@gembah.com to get in touch with us if you have an idea or you want to have a consultative approach to whatever your next idea is. We're more than happy to help.
That sounds great, and I appreciate you being here, and I'd love to have you back after that platform launches so we can talk more about it.
Absolutely, would love to be back. Thanks, Rich. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at innovationsandbreakthroughs.com, and we'll see you next time.